Is $500,000 enough to retire in America? What actually changes when you hit 1 million, 3 million, or 5 million? Two people the exact same age can walk into completely different retirements. Same birthday, same paycheck history, totally different reality. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which one is yours. Here's something that trips up almost everyone the first time they think seriously about retirement. Having money and having income are not the same thing. A number sitting in an account doesn't pay your electric bill. Only the part of it you can safely turn into monthly cash actually does that work. Picture someone checking their brokerage app the week after their last paycheck ever hits their bank account. The balance looks the same as it did the day before. But now that balance has to behave differently. It has to produce, not just sit there and grow. That shift from accumulating to generating is the real starting line of retirement. Every number you'll hear in this video, 500,000, 1 million, 5 million, only matters once you ask what it can actually produce for you each year. Two people can retire with the exact same account balance and end up living completely different lives. The gap comes down to a handful of factors most people never stop to weigh against each other. Start with the obvious ones. When you stop working, how much you spend each year, and what Social Security adds to the mix. Then add taxes, the cost of living wherever you plant yourself, your health, and how your investments actually perform once you're no longer adding new money. None of these factors work alone. Retire 5 years early in an expensive state with high medical costs, and even a large balance can feel tight. Retire later in a cheaper state with good health, and a modest balance can feel spacious. The next question is simple. How much of that balance are you actually allowed to spend each year without running out? For decades, financial researchers have leaned on a rough rule of thumb for how much of a portfolio someone can withdraw each year without running dry over 30 years. That number has traditionally sat between 3 and 4%, and experts don't agree on it. Say someone retires with $1 million. Using a guideline in that range, they might pull out between $30,000 and $40,000 in year one, then adjust slightly for inflation each year after. It's not a formula carved in stone. Markets don't move in a straight line, and neither does life. Think of it less as a rule book and more as a starting compass, a rough sense of what a balance can support before factoring in spending habits, health, and taxes, the pieces that make every retirement different. With that compass, the real comparison can begin. What does $500,000 buy you? $500,000 can absolutely fund a retirement, but it's a number that demands respect, not autopilot. Using a withdrawal guideline somewhere in that 3 to 4% range, a retiree might draw somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 a year from the portfolio itself. That's real money, but it's not a number that forgives careless planning. Imagine someone sitting at their kitchen table, calculator open, mapping out a year of groceries, insurance, and gas against a number that thin. Every category gets scrutinized. Nothing gets penciled in, just in case. This isn't a failure. It's a different kind of retirement, one built on precision instead of cushion. The margin for error is thinner here than at higher balances, which means every other piece of the puzzle, especially the pieces still to come, carries more weight than most people expect going in. At this level, Social Security stops being a nice bonus check and starts becoming the backbone of the whole plan. For a lot of retirees at $500,000, that monthly deposit isn't extra spending money. It's rent, it's groceries, it's the thing standing between a manageable month and a stressful one. And once Social Security carries that much weight, housing becomes the single decision that can make or break everything else. A paid-off house in a low-cost town leaves real breathing room. A mortgage payment or high rent in an expensive zip code can eat the entire benefit before anything else gets paid. That's the part most people underestimate walking into retirement. The check from the government matters less on its own than it does next to the roof over your head. Every retirement involves trade-offs, but at $500,000, those trade-offs show up early and often. Frequent travel gets replaced by the occasional trip. A big purchase, a new car, a kitchen remodel, becomes something you save toward for years instead of decide on in a weekend. Helping family financially gets harder too. A retiree at this level often has to say no to a grandchild's tuition request or a relative's emergency loan, not because they don't want to help, but because the math simply doesn't leave room. Here's the twist, though. Location can rewrite this entire story. The same $500,000 that feels tight in a coastal city can feel genuinely comfortable in a small town with cheap housing and low taxes. The number never changes, but where you plant it absolutely does. Crossing from 6 figures into 7 marks a real turning point, not just a bigger number on a screen. At $1 million, that same withdrawal range produces somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 a year, roughly double what $500,000 offered. And the difference shows up in more than just the math. Suddenly, the principal doesn't have to shrink as fast to keep the lights on. There's more room to let the portfolio keep growing quietly in the background instead of getting drained down to nothing. Choices about where to live start opening up too. A retiree at this level isn't locked into the cheapest zip code available. They can weigh a few different cities against each other and actually pick based on preference, not just necessity. That freedom to choose, rather than just survive, is what $1 million really buys. Somewhere around $1 million, a few trips a year stop feeling like a luxury and start feeling like a reasonable part of the plan. A long weekend away, a flight to visit grandkids twice a year. These become line items instead of fantasies. Emergencies change character too. A cracked windshield or a surprise dental bill still stings, but it no longer threatens the whole year's budget. There's a cushion now, even if it's not an unlimited one. None of this means the pressure disappears completely. Inflation still chips away at purchasing power year after year, taxes still take their cut, and medical costs still climb faster than almost anything else in a household budget. But here's the shift. Social Security now works alongside the portfolio as a genuine complement, not a lifeline holding the whole thing together. That difference changes everything about how the money feels. Something changes in the mind of a retiree once the balance crosses $3 million. And it's not really about the number itself. It's about the question that quietly disappears from the background of daily life. Below this level, the question hovering over most decisions is some version of, will my money last? At $3 million, that question starts fading, and a different one takes its place. How do I actually want to use my money? That's not a small shift. Worrying about survival and thinking about preference are two completely different mental states, and they produce two completely different retirements. One is defensive, careful, always calculating. The other opens up room for actual desire. What kind of life do you want to build now that the basic question has been answered? With $3 million behind them, a retiree's decisions start getting driven by preference instead of necessity. A better house, a place near the coast, maybe even a second property somewhere quieter. These move from daydream to genuine possibility. Helping the next generation gets easier too. Contributing toward a grandchild's education or handing an adult child a down payment stops requiring months of budget gymnastics beforehand. The help can happen without shrinking anyone's own lifestyle in the process. And then there's the timeline itself. Early retirement, once a fantasy reserved for other people, starts looking like something that could actually work on paper. A rideshare driver grinding toward this number isn't just imagining a beach. They're running real calculations about walking away 5 years sooner than planned. At $3 million, that math finally has room to say yes. Above $5 million, the entire goal of the money quietly changes shape. It's no longer just about preserving a lifestyle. It starts becoming about building something that outlasts the person who built it. International travel stops requiring a special occasion to justify it. Owning property, whether a vacation home or an investment, becomes a realistic conversation instead of a stretch. Supporting family members financially, not just occasionally, but meaningfully, fits comfortably inside the plan. And then there's the part few people talk about early in their careers: giving. Charitable donations, funding something that matters personally, leaving behind a real inheritance for the next generation. All of this becomes possible without threatening anyone's own security. At this level, the money isn't just serving one life anymore. It's starting to serve a legacy. At $5 million and above, something counterintuitive happens. Retirees often need to withdraw a much smaller percentage of their portfolio each year than the guidelines even suggest. The lifestyle simply doesn't require pulling out as large a share to stay fully funded. That smaller withdrawal rate does something powerful in the background. It creates enormous room to absorb a bad year in the market without changing a single daily habit. A steep downturn that would force someone at $500,000 to cut spending barely registers here. This is the quiet advantage of playing defense instead of offense. The portfolio isn't sprinting to keep up with expenses anymore. It's simply standing guard, built to withstand whatever the market throws at it over the next 20 or 30 years. Line these four numbers up next to each other, 500,000, 1 million, 3 million, 5 million plus, and a pattern starts to emerge that most people never expect going in. Income rises at each step, obviously, but so does something less obvious. The amount of mental energy no longer spent worrying about money. Housing gets more flexible, travel gets less rationed, healthcare stops feeling like a threat, and helping family stops requiring a spreadsheet first. Here's the part worth sitting with, though. Doubling your net worth doesn't come close to doubling your quality of life. Going from 500,000 to 1 million changes daily reality dramatically. Going from 3 million to 6 million changes it far less. The biggest leap isn't in what you can buy. It's in how much stress quietly leaves the room. $1 million sounds like one number, but it funds two completely different lives depending on where that money lands. In a high-cost state, that balance might stretch to cover a modest home and careful spending. In a lower-cost state, the exact same balance can fund a genuinely comfortable, even generous lifestyle. Housing costs alone can swing a monthly budget by thousands of dollars depending on the zip code. Add state taxes on top. Some states take a real bite out of retirement income, others take none at all. And the gap widens even further. Healthcare costs shift by location too, sometimes dramatically. None of this shows up when someone just says, "I have $1 million saved." The number is only half the story. The other half is written by geography. Here's an uncomfortable truth. A retiree with $1 million and $40,000 in annual expenses can be in a genuinely stronger position than someone with $3 million spending $150,000 a year. The bigger number doesn't automatically win. Net worth alone was never the real indicator. It just looks like one from a distance. What actually determines whether a retirement holds up is the relationship between three things: how much you have, how much income it generates, and how much you spend against it. Inflation erodes that relationship slowly over time. Sequence of returns risk can damage it early and permanently, right when a portfolio is most vulnerable. Taxes, longevity, and rising medical costs all lean on it too. The number was never the whole answer. It was only ever one piece of it. $500,000, 1 million, 3 million, 5 million, and beyond. Each one unlocks a genuinely different kind of retirement. More room, more choices, less weight on every decision. But here's what none of these numbers guarantee on their own: happiness. Plenty of people cross 7 figures and still feel anxious every time they check an account balance because the number was never the finish line they thought it was. The question that actually matters was never, how much money do I need? It's, what kind of retirement do I want? And what will that lifestyle actually cost? One question chases a target that keeps moving. The other builds a plan around an actual life. So take a moment and picture it honestly. Not what a stranger's version of a good retirement looks like, but yours. That picture, not the balance, is where real planning finally begins. If videos like this help you think differently about money, follow the channel. That's the easiest way to catch the next one the moment it goes up. Now here's the question worth sitting with. If you had $500,000, 1 million, 3 million, or $5 million today, which retirement would you actually choose? Drop your number in the comments and be honest about it. Not the number that sounds impressive, the one that matches the life you actually want to live. That answer says more than most people realize.